Football League. And it seems like undrafted rookie Austin Davis is now the backup quarterback, at least for now. Now, we do have a lot of guys that are on the trade block of quarterback, including they might want to take a guy like Mike Kafka. I've been very high on him ever since he's been very productive. I'm sure Phil Nunziata, my co-host over in NFL Goal Line, would be very excited, to see Mike Kafka perhaps make a battle for the number one quarterback job over at any ball club, or maybe even be one of those relief guys over in St. Louis. Now, let's go over to Tampa Bay. They made a lot of off-season kind of additions to their ball club to try and increase their play. After a 4-12 mark last year, they were very pathetic towards the final stretch. Jordan Shipley will not be on the Buccaneers. He was cut, and they also it's interesting over in Tampa Bay just how much flux is going on year in and year out at the receiver position. They obviously have the big-name guy in Vincent Jackson, but before I get any farther, I see just Vincent Jackson, one of those guys that can contribute big, maybe even a 1,000-yard year, but don't want to get too far for this reason and this alone. So many guys in the National Football League just kind of crumble apart with big money contracts. Now, I feel like Vincent Jackson should be paid with about as much money as he had, but I mean, in the long run, especially since this guy's going up in years, he's nearing the age of 30, I don't see Vincent Jackson as being one of those guys that, hey, why don't we pay him $50 million when his best years just might be behind him? And you see a lot of guys when they are veterans, they're arrogant in a way. San Diego was just not the place for Vincent Jackson. It seemed like for so many years, could barely even get on the field because of so much off-the-field distractions as far as trying to get a new contract signed. And now over in Tampa Bay, he signs possibly a bigger deal than he needed to be signed to. Way too much money in my mind. But for Vincent Jackson, just that money might tear him apart. You see so many NFL players, just go down the list, including possibly a guy like Terrell Owens we just mentioned earlier, seemingly crumbling after all this notoriety and all this, hey, you're supposed to be the guy that's supposed to carry this football team for Tampa Bay. Mike Williams was supposed to be that guy. Now it's just like so many question marks. I feel like in this situation, the Bucs have a free agent guy that you sign to a big deal where it's a lose-lose for them. Now, because I just see that the Bucs have two number 2 receivers and they don't really have a number 1. Vincent Jackson, he's played extremely well in the preseason, but it can be very misleading. Just putting it on paper right now, watch out Vincent Jackson. He may not be the guy for Tampa Bay that you would expect him to be coming into the regular season. Now let's just round out these cuts with the Oakland Raiders placing linebacker Aaron Curry on the reserve PUP list. Obviously, last year, Oakland also had a lot of injury concerns. Let's not start with Darren McFadden without saying the fact that the Raiders could have been in the playoffs if they had that guy early in the year, most notably the game against the New York Jets, where the Raiders just seemed to be a different football team without Darren McFadden in the backfield. So for Oakland this year, it's about putting all that behind you, putting last year, the Week 17 loss where they could have won the division, put that behind you, move on to next year, and try to win enough games to get into the postseason. It'll be harder now for Oakland, now that it seems to be not only a 3, but possibly even a 4-team battle in the AFC West. Don't even be surprised if the Chiefs make some sort of hay in that division. You obviously have the Broncos, the favorites, but a team like the Chargers or the Raiders, one of those teams that, one of those underdogs that could perhaps maybe win that division late in the year with some key divisional wins, maybe a run stretch to try to capture the AFC West. We are at the 20-minute mark of this show. NFL Cut Days recap will continue after this word from your local stations. We'll take a quick timeout. I am Nick Rice, and this is NFL Cut Days recap. Make sure to call in or text this number, 951-515-4552. We'll see you right after this quick commercial break. I am Nick Rice. Hello, guys. Welcome back inside the NFL Cut Days Recap Show studios. I am Nick Rice, live on Spreaker.com, part of the national sports broadcast team. I am the host of the weekly Monday NFL regular season countdown show. This is the NFL Goal Line. That show is Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune into that show just in 2 days, where we will preview everything about the National Football League. This is just a quick 30-minute show. We're looking for our very first text or caller into the program. I am Nick Rice, and we are live on national sports here on Spreaker.com. Now, we already went over the roster cuts over in the National Football League, and very quickly I'll be giving you my NFL regular season predictions. Obviously, the preseason could be very misleading. Let's not even begin without mentioning the guy over in Indianapolis that's supposed to take over Peyton Manning now with Denver, Andrew Luck. Now, he had a very good regular season, but let's just go over to Indianapolis now. Their defense is obviously extremely lack of talent. There's so much questions over on that defensive side. You can't even mark one position that needs help. Every position needs help, even with Vontae Davis recently signing a free agent tender over in Indianapolis. Now, let's just go over the first few games for this new quarterback over in Indianapolis. Andrew Luck, he's going to right off the bat have to travel to Chicago to take on the Bears. You have another divisional foe in the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe their first win doesn't come until Jacksonville in Week 3, but then you have Green Bay, the Jets, Cleveland, at the Titans, the Dolphins, and the Jacksonville Jaguars round out that first schedule with a trip to New England to face the Patriots. And I see that team right off the bat making a 3-7 mark and totally out of the playoffs by that point. I feel like Houston far and away will make that postseason on a landslide in a way. I see them possibly going 12-4, but right off the bat, Indianapolis, they probably will be in the top 5 again in this next year's draft because there's just so much on the defensive side that does need addressing, and also include the fact that maybe you guys will see the downfall of the two bigs over on that defensive side, and Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. They're going up there in age, and honestly, for Indianapolis, I mean, their schedule, it's a fairly easy battle, but there's some obvious teams that will go into their house, can do it every day and beat them down. Obviously, the Colts are one of those teams that need a few years. They're on that turnaround right now after losing Peyton Manning. It's one of those things where right now it's just in transition, trying to build the team around their new franchise quarterback. And if Andrew Luck can perform like he's done in the preseason, the Indianapolis Colts should be one of those Super Bowl favorites in the next 5 to 6 years. Now let's go over through every division and look at the divisional favorites and if I see them making the postseason. Let's start over with my favorite division. That's right, the AFC West. Now my San Diego Chargers are in there, but the favorite to win that division is, of course, the Denver Broncos, led by their lead man, Peyton Manning. And honestly, I don't see them losing the division. I mean, it would be extremely disappointing for them to even lose more than 7 matchups this year, including the fact that they have 6 games within the division. At least 4 I see them winning out of those 6, because it's just like I don't see the Chiefs beating them even once in their home stadium, Arrowhead. I see Denver winning easy, and then their final 5 games, just a cakewalk besides Baltimore. They have the Bucks. They're against the Raiders before they're home against the Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs. Probably 4 wins out of 5 on that home stretch. Now let's go over to another division. Still sticking to this conference, the AFC East. Obviously the favorites being the New England Patriots. Do I even have to say any more? The Patriots led by Tom Brady, that's about it. So now let's go over to the AFC South. And I feel like by default the Texans will win, but it'll probably be in a landslide late in the year because the Colts, Jaguars, and are you kidding me? Just 2 teams that really are going in the opposite direction. I don't see any team in the AFC South being even in contention by the latter portions of this year to winning that division. And then now let's go over to our final divisional preview, the AFC North, with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens fighting for the divisional lead, and maybe even the team that cannot win the division just because of how little teams I see competing in the AFC. The other team will most likely make the wild card. I see the Ravens, along with a lot of people, making their way into the postseason via possibly a number 2 seed, maybe even a number 1 seed. Don't be surprised. The Ravens are coming along with quarterback Joe Flacco, and you don't see the Ravens making headlines this year just because of the fact that they're handling their situation so well. Not the case with the New York Jets. We'll go over to that very quickly here, and obviously a lot more in depth on Monday night on NFL Goal Line. But for the Baltimore Ravens, just so many young guys that will come in and contribute. The name off the top of my head, Torrey Smith, the receiver there for Baltimore. I don't see the Ravens offensively with any weak links. Now, they did let go of Heap, but they do have a lot of young tight ends also as well. And then the Ravens, other than perhaps their left tackle, they have a lot of concerns and a lot of question marks at that position. Other than that, their weaknesses, I don't see them. They have a lot of strengths all across the board, and most notably on the defensive side, you have a lot of key contributors on that side of the football. Now let's go over to the NFC real quick on our Nick Rice's NFL predictions. Now let's stick over to the west side for the NFC. The Niners are winning that division. Next question. So now let's go over to the NFC East. And you have a couple of teams, actually 3 more specifically, in the Cowboys, Giants, and the Eagles that can, in fact, win that division. Now, I see late in the year, the Eagles, they're just too talented to not win the NFC East. With all of the just kind of the flux all over last year, and the fact that they had to bench Deshaun Jackson last year with, a lot of discipline issues. Andy Reid's one of those guys year in and year out, knows what it takes to win in this league. He's been, a veteran over in Philadelphia for quite some time, over a decade for the Eagles. Now I just see that this is the time that the Eagles reclaim their spot in the NFC East. And I'm sorry, New York, but you guys only get a number 6 seed for the NFC. And I just see the Eagles winning, going away with this one. And the Cowboys, there's just too much on that defensive side that worries me. I don't see the Cowboys making any more touchdowns than I see headlines so far in this preseason. They even have 2 guys over on the defensive secondary that can't even pass a physical. Are you kidding me? Next division, let's go over to the NFC South. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, the favorites to winning that division. We all know how that ended. They absolutely crumbled under pressure after a 4-1 beginning, losing 11 straight. Oh my goodness, that is not a way to end the year. Now, the winner in my mind to be taking hold of the NFC South, no longer the Buccaneers, no longer the Saints. For this NFC South, you run down the 4 teams in that division, and what team do you see that is so young and talented and can make that playoff push? They're not only quite talented over there in Atlanta, but they're hungry after losing big time to the Giants last year. I see the Falcons winning that division, despite the fact that they have a relatively easy division. They also have a very favorable schedule. Now, the Atlanta Falcons could possibly be one of those teams that are very misleading by their schedule, could win more games than they really should. They play probably one of the easiest schedules all year long. Let's just run down this list very quickly. Opening day against the Chiefs, then you're home against the Broncos, travel to the Chargers, and then you have your first divisional rivalry against the Panthers at home. Then you're at Washington, and then you're home against the Raiders. By the time they reach their bye in Week 7, they could be 5-1, Oh my goodness, what a great home beginning stretch. And then you have the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Saints, three teams that all have so many question marks.